Well, lacking a chair, I'll call the meeting to
So
order.
I would let you, we'll continue as we did last month. Mr. Fisker.
All right, and roll call obviously is from the sign-in, so I don't think we have to do a formal roll call, right?
Correct.
Approval of minutes. There should be a copy of those minutes attached. Any additions, deletions, or corrections?
I have a correction.
All right.
It says that the water.
Where you at?
Roman numeral 4, update from Sheila Sedna.
Okay.
It says this division did a couple of things like pre-treatment program, grease traps, water quality samples, BACT samples. We don't do BACT samples.
That is correct. I think I talked about that last time, but if I didn't, I'll talk about it when I make the presentation today. We've made some restructuring. Anything else?
No, water quality samples removed to Jefferson water plant. I would revise that to say water treatment
Where are we
division.
at?
It doesn't have a page number, but the page after.
Second page?
Second page, yes. It says now the water quality sampling has been moved to the Jefferson Water Plant / Water Museum. I would say water treatment division. It's been moved to the water treatment division.
That's correct.
I have a question in regard to the minute.
Yep.
Who is Shay?
Me,
Oh, okay. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Sheila.
Okay, Sheila. All right. Well, congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
Okay. And that explains what I was going to explain anyways, so that's it. Anything else? Great. Can I have a
I'll
motion?
make a motion to approve the meeting.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All against?
Aye.
You're against? Oh, you're against?
No, I said aye.
Oh, sorry. We went that into the first request for comment, then we'll come with the second.
You're a little on the.
All right, thank you. This is practice for me because I'm president of our HOA and I gotta run that meeting next week. I'm getting a little practice in. All right, you have two exhibits, and again, I know we had a long discussion about this last time. I'm interested in information you or the person you represent might want. So, and as all of my staff meetings are the same way, open topics for me are in a lot of cases the most important topics. I know what I want to tell you, and I hope you will value what I tell you, but I'm really interested in issues that you see out there, questions that are coming up in people you're talking to or whatever, and how we can either communicate those things better or address those, et cetera, et cetera. So having said all that, hold those thoughts and we'll certainly jump on those. I've included to you what I presented to City Council on, I believe it was January 28th. And if you didn't get a chance to catch the presentation, I want to make sure that I kind of go over what I talked to them about in general. The first slide you'll see is a couple things from our water museum. I did mention to council that is appear to me that for them this is a high priority. I can tell you that, and again, I'm not telling you anything out of school, this has already been said. I believe this is right for corporate sponsorship. I think it matches, as you know, I was a hospital CEO, a large system, and healthcare and water to me have a lot of commonality, so we'll be reviewing that. The corollary to that is I spent some time down there, and we have several of the exhibits and stuff that are not operating, so we're going to get those working. If we're going to have a museum, it's, in my opinion, we ought to have the exhibits that operate properly. And I want to make it higher profile. I want to make it part of our DNA if we're going to have one. And so that's all part of the process. So we'll be working on that. Sheila is the curator of our water museum. and I don't use that term lightly, but she's now housed there, and she'll be looking into getting some of this stuff done in the very near future. Second slide was related to our cross-connection program, which, as you know, has become a high priority coming out of the October event we had. Sheila's in charge of that. They're making significant progress. I'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation, but this is kind of a little summary slide. I guess the thing I mentioned to council here was the third bullet down. The department now is not water pollution. We're not in the water pollution business that I'm aware of. We're in the water treatment and the water quality business. So we've changed the name to reflect that. It's water quality assurance and monitoring. And a lot of the stuff they're working on, they're now creating some efficiency by using technology and some software and reporting and those kind of things, which will help some of our clients and make us better at what we're trying to get accomplished. Next slide. If you've never seen how we take a water sample, that shows you one of the sampling ports we use and one of our people doing that. We conduct 150 samples a month throughout the system. We have pre-approved sampling sites. We're changing all of those and reevaluating them. Some of them are in places that make it hard for us to get a good sample. And so therefore we could get false positives, which are a problem. So we're going to be doing that. That has to be approved by the TCEQ, so that's an ongoing process of reevaluating our sampling sites, and those will be remodeled and reapproved. The other thing that I did say, which you noticed in the notes, is that we've moved bacteria samples to the water treatment plant. I've never seen it not be a responsibility of that department, so we've made that change also. And these are all in response to the October issue, but actually looking at what we were doing and looking at the best way to do it. They're all certified people. And we've provided a lot of training. Next slide is the lead and copper revised rule. I can tell you, and I said this to council, we were due to have accomplished a few things by October 15th. We did not. We are now in compliance. And the importance of that is a couple things. The philosophy here, at least during my tenure, will be 100% compliance 100% of the time. It's not a guideline, it's who we are and what we do. And water's our product, and people drink it, and they take it, they bathe in it and those kind of things. So we take that very seriously. So compliance is a big part of that. The lead and copper situation is also important because we actually had a ratings meeting with the Fitch folks, I believe, not too long ago. And ironically, one of the questions they ask is, because remember, they're evaluating risk. You get a rating, you get a bond rating based on your risk profile, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the questions they asked was, a lot of our clients are getting into lead and copper. Where do you stand? Well, thank God we were able to say we were in compliance. But Adrian Goss did a great job. I gave him that task. He got it accomplished. So it was a big deal for us for compliance. It's important that we're being compliant, and it does factor into other parts of our business, is what you learn over time. So I was very pleased that we were able to say, yes, we're in compliance. And by the way, out of that meeting, they didn't change our rating. And so therefore, we at least preserved our bond rating through the October water quality event. Next slide is a picture of the new 36-inch line that's going in. It will tie into the Jefferson plant that ties in our Lion Street tanks. I want to get more information to people. In fact, we just had a meeting this morning with our public information group. There's a lot of good things going on in the water and wastewater utilities, and we've got to put more and more of that in front of the public. This is one way to do that. This is a nice project. It's a big time project. 36-inch main and 36-inch valves are big pieces of equipment, and it's something very positive that's going on, so that's why I included the slide. But there's a lot more to talk about. And the mayor, I've already talked to the mayor, and I said, Mayor, get your scissors sharpened up, because you're gonna be cutting a lot of ribbons. And we're gonna publicize those kind of things. The public needs to become aware of that. I know council's excited about that. The last picture I have for you, when I said to council, sometimes no matter how good you are, you get lucky. This is the 54-inch wastewater pipe that we are going to we plan on diverting flows from the Zacate plant to South Laredo, and some will go to the new Monadas plant when it comes online. This is the example I gave of why you do robotic pipe assessment. When you use CCTV only, you float a camera on the water level. You don't know whether the water's 6 inches deep, 2 inches deep, typically. When you use multi-sensor laser sonar CCTV assessment, you can see below the water level. This pipe, as you can see, is 40% full of debris. If in fact we would put our 4 or 5 million gallons in there, we might have had a problem, because the pipe wouldn't have had the capacity to take it. I can assure you that by the time we bring the new plant online and we start the diversion, this pipe will be cleaned and it will be able to handle its full capacity. This is the lucky part. We had a break on this pipe, so we got to look at it. But I can tell you, on council's agenda next week, there are 2 small diameter robots that we will be purchasing. I anticipate they'll approve that. Those will be used in our 6 to 12 inch or 8 to 12 inch pipe, and then the equipment that would be used for this, we would hire someone to come out and do the assessment for us. But this is the value of the stuff I've been talking about. So then we get into the slides. This is stuff, I was trying to give everybody kind of everybody said, what's been going on, what have you been doing, what have you been doing? And so this is kind of the immediate actions that we got started after I arrived. We had a website that was just wasn't operating, so we really had no website technically. So we've reactivated that. We've got a contract for a year, and then it's actually being supported by an external resource that will be moved inside to the city network, which I think is where it belongs. But in the interim, we had the website. And why it became important is we had to post our lead results on the website. So, these things all fit together. But the good news is, because we jumped into action, they were all in place when we had to do the notifications. And the lead notifications to the public are now going out each billing cycle. So early, actually probably by the end of this month, we will have gone the full cycle. You've heard about, we stood up the cross-connection program. I'll talk a little bit about the results of that later. That's going, it's been realigned, and actually Sheila's in charge of that. I talked about lead copper compliance, that's been accomplished. Chlorine dioxide, that project's been approved. It'll be a ribbon cutting next week. That's a new process that'll be at each of our water treatment plants. And I would describe that as a polishing process. I mean, obviously the plants are built, we're in full compliance with all the standards as they sit today. But when you add chlorine dioxide like we're doing, you add another barrier to support dealing with maybe some water quality issues we may have in our source of supply, and more importantly, give us a more refined product going out to the public. Okay? And that ribbon cutting will be next week. I talked a little bit about reorganizing the water sampling activity. That's what that talks about. That's been done. I told you that we're going to reevaluate our sampling sites. That's being done. Okay? And the good news is we've had no issues since October. So it's kind of like these things. You just keep. You want to put as much distance between you and those events as you possibly can. The next one we're not going to do, but we had talked about partnering with the health department. And then the final thing, you probably know this, we did buy some additional water capacity financial improvement, you're gonna find very quickly that my philosophy on utility management is we do everything. We don't focus, we focus on priorities, but we do all kinds of things. And to me, water quality, as you know, is a high priority. Cost effectiveness and cost efficiency is a high priority, and so on and so forth. So you'll see in these exhibits kind of my focus areas and what we've done in those areas. We've developed some savings, and this is working with staff, reevaluating some decisions or some potential decisions that were going to be made, and so there's significant savings that have been generated. I can tell you since this date, this was based on my 90-day report, so to speak, or evaluation. There's probably another $300,000 or $400,000. Well, I know there's another $400,000 or $500,000 in savings we could add to this list, but it should be ongoing. It's part of our DNA. It's how we do business. Next slide. Again, another one of my pet categories, operating efficiency and staff training. I said this to council, my first presentation to them, I talked about my definition of sustainability. That's the attraction, development, and retention of in-house intellectual capital. It's all about people. People make you sustainable. Every utility that I know of has pumps, motors, and plants, and pipes, and valves, and hydrants. It's whether you keep them operating properly, keep them clean, keep them updated, keep them operating. So, and that's a people thing, so that's always a high priority for me. So training is important as well as efficiency. I believe in providing our people the best tools we can give them and then asking them to be productive with those tools. So we've purchased automated valve operating equipment. We'll have an active valve operating program up and running here. That equipment should be in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we will instantly be operating and getting involved in that. What I said to council, and I would say to all of you, is we're going to break a bunch of valves. We're going to find a bunch of valves that aren't working. We're going to find a bunch of valves that have been closed that we didn't know it. We're going to find valves that are open and we didn't know it. But that goes with the territory. But as we move forward, the magic here is very simple. Main breaks will be shorter duration, less lost water. The area impacted will be a lot smaller because the valves that we need to work will be working. And so there's a lot of synergies of a valve program. And we're going to do it for real. And as I will say to you, and I would say to anybody, this will be our normal operating procedures. This isn't a fad. This isn't replacing mains because we got main breaks. This is replacing mains every year like routine, and replacing valves and operating valves. And this is part of what utilities do. This isn't special stuff. It's new to us, but it's not special stuff for the best of the best, and that's where I want us to be. You know, we relocated water and air quality staff to the museum. That's where Sheila and her group are. So we have presence there, and we have a museum that's off and running. We've used Ardura, which is a consultant to the city, and I thank Nacho, but you know, we've used them to do some training because I want sampling to be done at a high level. We've had bad samples, not bad. We've had bad sampling, not bad samples. There's a difference. Yeah. That is something we can't tolerate. Okay, we need proper sampling at proper sample sites done the right way, because to not do that causes a lot of drama that's unnecessary. So that's the whole message here. We've scheduled TCEQ training. A lot of that's already gone on. Some of it's going on as we sit here today, and Flushing and a lot of those things. And we'll take advantage of those opportunities as part of our training priorities. And then I told you about transitioning samples to the water plant. Customer service and billing. Again, if you would look at my performance plan in Arlington, Texas, it would look very similar to you, only with better outcomes. We're starting an AMI meter change-out program. We're going to be going to the Texas Water Development Board in a couple weeks for some funding for that. But we're going to move forward one way or the other. We've got a system that's not functioning the way it was planned to function. So we're gonna have to spend some money to get it working right. But that's integral to water conservation and billing and efficiency, so it's an important procedure. The next couple items are things that should be pretty routine, but we've had to put, we've worked on putting those in place. We need to be diligent about repairing our road patches. When we make an excavation, fine. The good news in this climate is we can do it year-round. I lived in a world where we couldn't make a final repair to pavement for 6 months. I mean, the batch plant closed in October and it opened in May. So we had to maintain those patches through snow and thaw and rain and all that kind of stuff. Here we don't have that, so we need to get better at that. We've set a goal of 15 days. We do an excavation today for a main break. Within 15 days, we do final repair. Now, we are not there yet, but we will be there, and that's the game plan. And I think that'll solve a lot of the inquiries we get from council people, et cetera, because that seems to be a big issue, and for all the right reasons. The other thing is, we're putting in place standard operating procedures for outages. We have situations where we shut down an area 4 days in a row. And we can do a little better than that. I've asked our crews that before we do any planned shutdowns, we should go out and operate all the valves that we're gonna need to operate when we get out there. And quite frankly, if 4 of them aren't working, we're gonna have 1 shutdown and send 4 crews out and replace 4 valves in 1 outage. It's simple.
Mhm.
It just takes a different orientation to how you wanna tolerate your business, right? None of the stuff I'm talking to you about takes a road scholar to figure out, but it's just a reorientation of how you wanna do business. And I want shutdowns to be limited, and I want them to be efficient, and I want them to be well run. And so that's the stuff that you don't see here, but those are the SOPs we're talking about. Yes?
When you're in these situations, they get as-built and all the information once they're done on these repairs for future problems? I mean, when they're out there, they're digging, they're saying, oh man, we didn't know there was an old line here, is that information sent out to them with their stuff? Like any type of as-built or?
Well, I'm talking about repairs to a main break, a valve break.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that.
You're asking if they're collecting as-built.
Yeah, cause we've done it where they said, oh, the water line's right here broke, you go down, man, it's not there where you said it is.
Oh, you mean locations?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what I'm
sure,
saying.
yeah, well, what I wanted to do, I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing we're doing, there's a lot of things
Because
we're
that-
doing,
man, that was so
is getting GIS coordinates on every valve, hydrant, manhole, and we've got some of it, but as I told my staff, I want all of it. And I want a timetable to have it all, because I want layers with all that stuff. When we go out in the field and it's not there, we
Yeah,
change the coordinates
that's-
and bring that back.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, exactly. But again, none of this stuff is earth-shattering, but when you're not doing it, it's innovative. And that's okay, it's nice to be innovative. But we gotta do this as normal practice.
Yeah.
You get, this is how we do business. That's culture change, that will take a while, but that's where we're going. So
Is that what they're at the time, because they're not just digging out, they know, okay, remember we broke it over the lines on this location,
Well, I want the maps, and I want our data to be
Yeah,
accurate.
because one worker said, oh, let's be real quick, we were there for 3 days because we couldn't find the line,
Well, yes.
That sounds good.
Yes,
After
and
we
by the
just-
way, we're also, it just goes on and on, but we're also going to put a full-time resource to leak detection. We have no leak detection equipment. I can't imagine having a utility that doesn't have the ability to find leaks, but, so we're gonna dedicate a resource to that, we're gonna buy the best equipment available. So not only will we have ongoing leak detection, but when we have a leak and we can't find it, which happens, this equipment will be able to pinpoint the leak and they'll say, dig here, not 4 holes down the street. Okay? That's all technology we're gonna add. It's out there, it's common, it's not unusual, but, we're gonna add those kind of things. So thanks for the question, I appreciate that. talked about the private line, or the public, the lead lines, we've done that. And then, this is exciting to me, because I think it's a high priority. The last item there is, we have identified 69 streets where we're gonna start out with main replacement. The game plan is this: we designed 3 of those streets. Those will go out to bid in very short order, 1 or 2 weeks from now. We will get a successful bidder, whether it be trenchless technology, open cut, or some combination. We will then start down that list. We're gonna go as fast as we can, and we're gonna post as we go, like a the United Way. You have the thermometer, and you fill it in as you're going. I want it to be high profile. I want people to understand that we're doing the things they asked us to do, that they give us money to spend for, okay? And so we're gonna keep track of that.
Okay, so say in those situations, is there a line item you could put to help you on the GIS location, say, hey, we're doing a water replacement line, there's gonna be an item to hire someone to go and check the valves? I mean, since there's the road is so big and you're trying to get all the information at once, could there be a line item for that? Before the project starts, a group goes out there, surveys, checks where everything's at before the water replacement?
We have had a department that's supposed to have been doing that for a few years.
I'm just saying, we're gonna be there, it's in the bid, whoever gets the job is gonna start seeing all all the valves that are uncovered. I mean, they're gonna see all this information once they start digging. Like when the plant started, nobody knew about some bacterial, some chlorine lines were in the project, so we call it, it's like, hey, you have 3 chlorine lines, one has chlorine, one for the future, one is out. So when these replacement, construction guys go out there, would be a great to have an item where they could survey the place and give you the information, GIS. Not just replacing the water line, but showing you what's existing.
Well, you're saying include that
In part of the bid,
as
yeah.
part of the bid with the contractor, so the contractor would be
We'll hire
responsible
someone,
for
hire a survey company.
time.
Well,
I'm just saying, would that help, or just?
well, we have people that are supposed to be doing that,
Okay.
okay, in-house.
So there's an in-house group that has survey
We have a
equipment. that
GIS
can-
group that has the equipment that's what I said, we're 80% of this and 70% of that. Well, I want 100%. That's what our function is. But to answer your specific question, there's a strong potential here that we may use a trenchless technology.
Yep,
If that is the case, there is no other lines, because we're gonna use the existing line as our conduit.
Mm.
So we don't tie up additional right of way. It's a much cleaner, much faster process. If it works the way it's worked in my past experience, it'll be cost effective, those kind of things. If we do open cut, as you know, then we've got the old line and the new line. And, so that's a whole different thing. We're designing for that because we're not gonna prejudge the bidding, but there's a strong possibility that we'll be doing some of the trenchless, which will eliminate some of those needs. And by the way, when you do trenchless, my experience is it's called pre-chlorinated pipe bursting, which means they will assemble the line for that block. They will chlorinate it and pressure test it, but there's no joints, so there's no more leaks.
Fusible.
Yeah, it's all fused, there's no more leaks. You pull this HDPE through, you bust the old pipe, pull the new one through, put the services on, and off we go.
Yeah, nobody loses service stays 100%.
Yeah, so, and you can almost do a block a day. So we'll see, sometimes you run into some unique things, but anyway, so I don't wanna prejudge it, but those are the opportunities ahead of us. I can tell you that another city that I'm familiar with has been putting in 20 to 40,000 feet a year since 2016. And when you do that, main breaks go like this, lost water goes like that, and all the other savings that go with it. And then you just keep pouring that money back into your CapEx program, and your rates go like this, because that's the end game. Regulatory compliance, you heard me make my stump pitch on that. 100% of the time, 100% successful. One of the things that's not unique here is, the first question always is all of our own facilities have backflow? A lot of times they don't.
Like city-owned facilities?
Yes. You know, I'll tell you what to do.
Do as I say, don't do as I do.
I'm the opposite. I
Yeah.
do what I say I'm gonna do first, and then I go to you and say,
Sure.
I need you to do it. So
Yeah.
I just want you to know, and I told council, we're looking into that stuff. Some of them have been tested. Sheila's gone out for some bids. We're gonna use some plumbers to do that, and make sure our stuff's, we wanna be in compliance.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then we had 362 things identified when we had the October incident from TCEQ inspectors and some folks we had come over from McAllen, which I thank the city manager and mayor for that in McAllen. We sent them a nice basket too, by the way, because I appreciate that stuff. But anyway, so those have all been addressed. We were down to 44. And I had the exact breakdown for council, I don't have it with me, but I can tell you that they're all either under resolution or they've been resolved. So I think that's a nice message to give everybody. I told you about the bacteria sampling sites and I told you about the lead buffers. That was my presentation to council for the summary of the first 90 days, so to speak, of my being here. I'll stop there. Anybody have any questions?
I like the language that you have on this. Real interesting, because like the Aurora would come here and talk, we're like lost in their language, you know. And here it's like anybody can read it and understand it, which it's really nice on that.
Well, I appreciate that compliment, because I'm a fan of straight talking and not a lot of wordsmithing.
Yeah, pictures and all that, just like.
So when you say in compliance with lead and copper
Yes.
rule provision mandates, like, how did you achieve that compliance?
By October 15th of 2024, all the larger utilities, of which we are one, was to have done an inventory of their current service lines to ascertain how many they may have that might be lead or galvanized. We hadn't done that. There's a lot of ways to do that, by the way. So to bring us into compliance in as short a time as possible, we used the methodology that said, go back and look at all new construction after 1989 can be assumed to not be lead or galvanized, and everything prior to that is assumed to be unknown. We ended up with 37,000 of our 80,000 services in the unknown category. Now, so we had until, as I say, October 15th to do the inventory. Once you do the inventory, you have 30 days to make that inventory information available to your public. That's where the website came in. Okay?
On the website.
And the bills. And so what we decided to do to make it cost effective, we made our website work and we posted it. And then we decided each billing with the billing, we would send the notice out to the residents, go look at the website. We're getting about 480 visits to our website from our notices, which is great. We did also, and this is style for me, but we made a Q&A up for our call center and said, here's, there's just questions that'll be asked. We provided that. We've only had one call that our call center couldn't handle. So that, we must have hit the mark there too. But the point being, we just didn't send it out on the website, we just didn't want to cause hysteria. We wanted to make sure our call center people could efficiently handle any inquiries. But my point is, we're getting 400 and some inquiries a month.
Yes. No, a day.
A day, that's what I thought, yeah. So as this stuff goes out, people are inquiring, and they're obviously getting the answers and the information, because we're not getting a lot of follow-up calls we can't answer, which I think is, and we're almost through the full cycle. We started in January, so we only need a month. And then so that's compliance. Compliance is, did you do the inventory, and then within 30 days, did you start getting the inventory and the information out to the general public? We've met all those hurdles. The next hurdle is by 2027, I think, we'll have to have some action plan to deal with what we find out. What I anticipate doing is we will be going and asking for some funds, which there's funds available from the Texas Water Development Board, to actually help us refine our inventory, because we can actually go out and do an excavation or test the metal. There's also some equipment out now that you can actually put in the line and it'll tell you what type of material it is. So we'll try to refine that. So we have a what's the right term, from my geometry class? We have what's the term for, well, we have a challenge of 37,000 we need to refine, okay? And so we'll try to refine that down. The other thing that's gonna happen, and again, all these things come together, which makes this business fun, when you get it all working. As we start replacing mains, we're gonna know what the service lines are, because we're gonna put new service lines in with every main. So not only are we gonna replace mains in this community, we're gonna replace service lines. And that's all gonna be part of the project. So then we'll find out if we have some areas that have lead and copper, or have lead or galvanized, and that'll help us pinpoint some things. So all these things will keep getting themselves refined just in our normal processes.
On the question on the line breaks, Ms. Yoder wants to know, and also be like, what district's gonna be worked on, what lines do you have in line for replace? She would like to know, because she got a map where all the breaks are at, and she's asking what's gonna be done. And I was like, well, let's look at the map and see where the major ones are, and who's selecting what's gonna be fixed first.
Well, I'm selecting it.
That's what I'm saying.
We have a list of 69, and I can tell you that amazingly, every district has 4 or 5 of those mains. Okay? So we're gonna do it across the city. Which one we do first or second, I mean, we'll just kind of pick that. But everybody, there's, of the 69 original highest break frequency mains, there's 4 or 5 at least 4 or 5 in every district.
And then when would you know that a certain district's gonna have these other streets that they're not doing it now, but we have in mind, so I can say, hey, they are looking at that, and these are the streets that they're looking at.
I can provide you the list.
Okay.
That's easy.
That's all the question she had.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we're gonna be prudent about how we do all this stuff, but, we picked the highest break frequency. There's 69 of them, I can tell you that, I've told council that. I've got the list, there's no mystery here. The city manager has it, everybody has it. We can make it public, I don't have a problem with that, but, how we do it, in what order, will be a little more, random.
At least you could tell the district, we are working on that, these are the streets that we don't know when, but at least you know.
Yep, absolutely, we can provide that information. We're done guessing, and we're gonna set our patterns, we're gonna set our outcomes, and we're gonna meet them, okay? That's the best way I can say it. Any other questions?
I have several questions.
Yes, sir.
Walter, can I call you Walter or Mr. Bishop?
You know, I refereed basketball for 42 years, so I've been called a lot of things. Walter's a good one.
You play basketball or you coach?
I referee basketball, I play basketball, but I referee basketball.
Yeah, they probably did call you a lot of things.
They call me righty. No, I'm
Were
joking.
you, if you were whistle happy, I'm sure they did call you a lot.
I wasn't. I let the players play.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, regarding your presentation that you made, when was it, January 28th, you said?
Yes, sir.
Was this presentation PowerPoint, visual, audio there for the entire city of Laredo to,
Yes.
great. Okay, were you allowed to make a presentation early during the meeting, or were you placed on the back burner?
I made the presentation at 10:30, I think it was.
At night?
Right.
So
That was primetime viewing for California.
I'm gonna have to send a notification to the mayor to see what we can do about moving you up on the meeting.
We've
We
informed that topic of several times over the years.
Yeah.
Actually, I modified some of them because it was 10:30 at night, so, but basically I went through the slides away.
Here's the deal, the way I see water is life, all right, and you are the director of utilities, which is providing safe and normal water or up to standard water by way of DEQ, and which is the other one, the,
Texas Water Development Board.
which is the F something like that, federal?
Oh, federal EPA.
The EPA, with, in regard to the 1974 Safe Water Drinking Act by the U.S. Congress. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm just doing. I'm just sharing that. It's very nice. It's very nice to have, do some research.
Last time they went in.
Might as well throw a little in there when we have time.
Can I make a note of that on my sheet over here?
Okay, in regards to your presentation, I'm sure there is, I think called Swag It on City of Laredo or something like that. where they have
It's the website where you can watch the videos live or watch them after they've been recorded.
Okay, is there any way I can have just your section of the presentation sent to my email address? Cause I don't know how to make the
Oh, you
editing.
mean the video?
Yeah, just the video, just your
Did you
recording.
All you have to do is
Yeah,
go into the
it's
city's
simple.
website, go to where it says live city council meetings, and then you go to previous ones, you find the thing. On the agenda, you look for staff reports, and if you click on that one, because
It takes
he's
you
on the
right
staff
to it.
report,
But it takes
he
a while,
clicks
though.
you, no.
No, it takes
Click
you
on
right-
it, it'll
it
take
takes
you
you more or less
It takes you right to it, it takes you right to the
Yes.
Each staff report will actually have the,
Separate segment.
Once you
Yeah,
click on it,
so
it's-
every
link or
on the left
whatever.
side of the screen is the agenda. If you click on the item, it takes you to where the video started of that topic.
It'll take you to
It's
10:30
pretty
at
easy.
night on that January 28th.
okay.
I think it was around 10, it was late.
Great job, City of Ray, on doing that. Here, Barry, let me, I don't have some more questions here. Let me see. Checking my notes here, I may have another 2 questions. Okay, in regard to this paragraph, 36-inch main that you had, I noticed that there's a T or a valve
About,
That's
right
right.
here.
that
Alright.
was about,
But
But
it
that
is a
tap is
valve, but it is a
valve.
T, yeah, it's a tap. Where is this location?
at the
That's Jefferson plant.
Okay, it's over there on Jefferson Street.
No, the plant.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
plant.
Pender Avenue is the street, Jefferson plant is on Pender Avenue,
So basically what it is
at the.
Lion
Inside the plant.
and then Jefferson all the way over there.
Jefferson going all the way down, Garden, going to Zacate, heading up to Lion.
Is it on that map right there?
Okay, so it would be, it's right here.
Jefferson, right there where that green is, right there, inside the plant.
Okay.
You look how small the guys look.
Yeah, it's a 36 inch. I remember when these 36 inches burst or something back in, on Lion Street about 4 or 5 years ago.
About 3 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago? I know that. I went over there and took some video and it was
Right next to
freezing.
Ochoa School, yeah.
And it was freezing when this happened, and I was taking some video, and I was mentioning on the video, I guess thinking out loud, saying, man, these city employees are really busting, they're working very hard, excuse me, in these freezing temperatures.
Yep.
Okay, in regards to regulatory compliance, you were there?
No, that was my construction crew.
That was your comparison, man, but it was freezing those days that I was there taking that
Better than
video.
the heat,
You were
man.
at home with a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
I was watching.
completing, a follow-up on the 362 identified potential cross-connection sites identified by TCEQ. These 362 identified potential cross-connection sites, what area, what does it mean by cross-connection sites? Are these illegal sites, or?
Well, let's get into, words mean something to me, okay? A cross connection is a potential situation where water could be back siphoned into the water system. Okay? That could be a bunch of things. It could be you could have a slop sink and you could have a hose on it that you hose things and you drop it down in the water. I've had this happen in a high school. They were in an art class and they had paint, water paints, and they would dump it into a slop sink and clean their brushes and stuff. Well, don't you know that they had a little hose on the faucet, and they let it drop in there, and we had a main break, and suddenly people were calling us and saying, hey, I got blue water, I got red water.
Oh my God.
Because there was a back siphon and it
The
went
back siphon,
out,
yeah.
out, down through the line and out in the street. So
Wow.
that's a potential cross connection. A washer, which has got soap and stuff in the bowl of the washer, and it's hooked up to your plumbing, and the faucet's open like it always is because the washer adjusts that. If you have a main break, in theory, some of that could be back siphoned into the water system. Hot water tanks are habitual potential cross connections because they can over pressurize themselves and push water. Whenever there's pressure on this side that's higher than the pressure on this side, there's a potential. When this pressure drops because of a main break or a depressurization, then there's a higher potential for this to happen. That's a cross
Yeah,
connection.
remember when you're filling up your pool with water and you leave the hose out there?
Yep, you leave a hose in your pool. In theory, if there was a backflow, a back siphon, you can suck that water into our water mains.
That's a gap connection.
That's
Okay,
a cross
Frank.
connection.
final question without actually chastising anybody or taking any pot shots at anybody. In regards to our federal government right now, especially more leaning on the executive office and where, how they are appointing, I would say underqualified, individuals for very important positions. What are the chances of Mr. Kennedy forcing the entire nation of removing the application of adding fluoride to our water system?
Well, we don't add fluoride here in Laredo. This is one of the few places I've ever been that doesn't, quite frankly. Most states, like Ohio and some others, it's mandatory unless you pass some kind of local ordinance to not do it.
So in Laredo, we don't add fluoride.
That's correct.
I learned some years back that we used to.
I don't know about the history.
Okay, so that's just Laredo, or that's the entire state of Texas?
Well, Arlington adds it, and so does Amarillo, and so does some other places I've personally been. So I think it's more general. If you're asking me, are there more communities that add it that don't add it, I would think there's a clear preponderance of communities that do add fluoride versus not. So,
Since Laredo doesn't add fluoride to our public water system, and it hasn't harmed us, so in reality, it's, say we add fluoride, and we don't know if it will harm us or not. So might as well just keep it working and keep Mr. Fisker running the utility department to highly improve our water system. Yes, I was buttering some bread there.
no,
You got it.
seriously, fluoride's been an issue since I've been started in this business in 1970. There's always been some people, pros and cons. And again, my opinion is just my opinion, but everywhere I've moved, because I moved from Ohio, where I grew up, to Illinois, and ran water systems there, and then Texas and Pennsylvania, whatever. I always usually ask the dentist, what do you think of fluoride? Everyone that I've ever talked to said it's, it was the World Health World Health Organization's health thing of the year for a long time because of the benefits it provides some people. Again, but I don't have if somebody came to me and said we don't want to provide it, I would say fine. I respect that. In general, most people would think it's a benefit, but you guys get to pick your poison there. I don't have a.
So my final question was maybe it was irrelevant and ignorance on my behalf. But anyway, but this your presentation that you shared with us here has been informative.
Well,
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Okay, good. That's what I'm looking for. I want your feedback. If we're missing the point, I want to know it because I want to get the point right.
And now that I have the floor here, no more questions. I'd like to make a comment, being that our meetings are being recorded and there is a record on it and we have minutes on it. Back in 2019, when we had one of the first major boil water notices here in Laredo, which it took, I think, they took the city of Laredo 9 days to actually decide if they were going to notify the public in regards to what was going on in the water system. One of the suggestions I made as the founder of one of the groups here in Laredo to keep our city officials in check and keep our water up to standards of the EPA and the TCEQ is I made a suggestion to, however, it was relayed to the city of Laredo officials, to city management and the mayor by way of a group of attorneys that were representing our group, to have the monitoring system that the city of Laredo has available to the public 24/7 by way of the way the city of Laredo has a website That was, however, I do not know if that got approved or was followed up on, but it's something that maybe we may wanna talk about in the near future to, not to scare the public, but just to keep them well informed.
Well,
Please.
I'm glad to comment on that. The more we can share with the public, the better, in my opinion. One of the benefits of an AMI metering program is you can provide a residence portal. I mean, the next sophistication is that the system that's in place in a couple of my past stops not only have AMI for all the benefits, because remember, with an AMI meter system, you're reading that meter every minute. So I, as a customer, can go on and look at my usage every 15 minutes of every day. So I can help myself. It's a great tool for the utility, because when people call up, and if I've heard this once, I've heard it 50,000 times in my career, I couldn't have used the water.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we have a record, and I showed this to some of my other city councils. When somebody calls up, we say, gee, Mr. Smith, you used 3,000 gallons between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. What do you think caused that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? We could never tell you that before. That answers the riddle,
Yeah.
okay? But also, they have portals now that would be where we would go to if in my opinion. And the customer can now go in and look at that and say, okay, what's going on with my water quality every day? What's the pressure? What's the flow? How much water am I using? Those kind of things. And quite frankly, a good utility, it's like a student that studies for an exam. When I was teaching at Butler, if we had to cancel an exam, the ones that studied were disappointed. The ones that didn't were thrilled. Hopefully that's the minority, right? But the point is, if you're doing a good job, you want people to know what you're doing. It segues me into another comment. We just met with the public information group this morning. I want much more feedback going out to this community. I want them to know what this group is doing. It's good stuff. Now, we got our issues, we'll fix those, but we got a lot of good stuff going on. And the museum's a good thing, and we want to highlight it. We want everything to work there, because that sends a message, right? But there's a lot of good stuff going on every day by some hardworking people, and I want more people to know about that. So your point of the more information, we should be advocating for that versus not advocating for it, in my opinion.
And I'm glad we see eye to eye on that. In regards to the museum, I have no idea how to run a museum.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why don't we have our next meeting at the museum?
I want to say there was a meeting at the museum, right? We had
Oh, you did that
a couple of years ago, but I think it'd be a good idea to do it again, for sure.
Okay, because
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
I'm a big fan of getting out, we could do one at a water plant.
Sure.
I want you to see what's going on.
I
The
just
only
have
way
to
see-
make sure that, because the meetings are recorded and we don't have recording capabilities at the museum, so we have to double check on it before we say, let's have it at the museum.
Recording capability, what's that mean?
It's being recorded.
Like that camera over there.
Okay,
The meetings have to be recorded, so the room has to be equipped to be able to
So
put it,
how
so,
did they do it in the past? Because I've seen some meetings that were recorded.
because the
there.
meeting that we had was not just an advisory committee, it was part of the,
They were making
it
the
was like a presentation by the
presentation.
San Antonio,
presenter.
remember the
Somebody
Like
came in and made a
Sauce came in.
presentation.
So it wasn't necessarily, you just
Yeah.
kinda combined it, but it wasn't
Well,
part of that thing.
anyways, I would love to have you come out to facilities from time to time and see what's really going on, especially when we got the chlorine dioxide project going on, we got some new pumps going in and those kind of things. It'd be good for you to see that,
Yes.
quite frankly, in my opinion.
Sure.
I agree.
And for our taxpayer, benefit, where's the museum located?
Next to the Jefferson Water.
It's
Right
right
next to that value over there.
It's right
Just
on-
north of the plant.
It's on 2702 Anna Avenue.
I thought that, I knew exactly where it's located, thank you. Well, now, permíteme, Big Lou. I think it would be highly beneficial for our public if we could get my proposal to have these, meters or this sophisticated equipment that shows you the quality of our water actually on a flat screen presented there at the museum, say that's, and you say, this is 24/7 how our water is doing, and let's move on now, all right, you know, something like that.
We're in agreement, more is better when it's good, and we've got good.
Before I shut my mouth, because I can get long-winded, I may be quiet for an hour, but then I'll let loose.
So I'm gonna get home from
Back
work.
in 19.
So that means we gotta get the meeting over, and that's good enough.
Okay, I know, okay, besides the point, aesthetics, my personal aesthetics on my behalf, I know I'm missing teeth, okay? Do not go to rodeo dance, please. Now, that's off- that's off topic. I will go to Mexico to fix this. I'm gonna have to go to Mexico and get it fixed, get that bridge cemented on top. Anyway, in 1988 and 1989, some years ago, I was working for a high alloy processing facility in Houston, Texas. And when I'm talking about high temperature alloy, I didn't add temp in first. I'm talking about alloys that pertain to space shuttle, jets, commercial aviation, stuff like that. We had tags, per se, tags the size of maybe this size of a tag. Right? And when we would process the material, but first of all, it's not blue collar work, okay? It was not white collar.
Not to be rude, is it anything with water or just an experience?
What I'm getting at is, I'm following up and adding to what Mr. Fisker added. The tag, you would write to the tag the type of material that you actually found and you classified by way of your studies by using a spectroscope. In that tag, there was never enough space for all the information that should be there. What I'm getting at as being a committee member for iron alloys, which no longer exist, I had nothing to do with that. I had nothing to do with them no longer existing, but anyway, what Mr. Fisker is saying, what I am saying here is that when it regards to the taxpayer and the public, there's never enough information you could share with them. So that's all I want, and I'll end at that.
The only question I have is water conservation. I know we're out of that level, but I think we should still go back. And the only question I have on the water bills, is there a limit that we have on so much Tahoe has, and if they pass that limit, does the rate increase?
So let me,
That's the only question I have.
well, that's a good question. Here's what I know. We implemented stage 3 without the capability of doing the penalty, or whatever you call it, for overuse. That was one factor in why we moved back to stage 2. The other factor was, in stage 3, there are no construction meters. We had given out over 100 exceptions to that situation. Well, when you only have 105 meters and you give out 105 exceptions, what's the sense of being half in and half out? So, and the other thing I looked at when we moved from 3 to 2 was our usage has gone down in the past year. So our hope is that we'll maintain that lower usage without the restrictions, because the restrictions have impacts. And as I said to council in my first presentation, I'll hearken you back to that. I said to them, water and wastewater services to a community are integral to your economic vitality and your quality of life. The last thing we should want to do is hamper our economic vitality and our quality of life when we don't have to. So, that's how we made the transition from 3 to 2 when I came. We will continue to monitor that. And so we're going to continue to push conservation. That's not going away. But conservation is not drought emergency. There's a difference. And I've made that clear to everybody. We publish and have an ordinance on water conservation and drought emergency. We put them together so sometimes people confuse. We don't want to live in a state of emergency. it's constraining to your economy and your quality of life. So we wanna live in a state where we're effective and efficient. Part of that issue, and I'll point you to this exhibit, cause it's a perfect segue. When I made this presentation to the mayor's group, I said to them, I believe our future second source, if that's what you wanna call it, is gonna be all of this, or parts of it. But a part of that is what we do running the utility. You reduce your main breaks, reduce your lost water, you add to your source of supply without constraining usage. The other thing I showed council when I first made that presentation was that little teeter-totter. Well, guess what? You don't use any water, your rates just go way up because you got a fixed cost business. You got investment you've made in plant and pipe and tanks, you got people, and whether you pump 1 gallon of water or 70 million gallons of water, there's not a whole lot of difference in people and stuff. So you wanna be cognizant of that equilibrium, because if you push too much on this side, you get half of the water for twice as much money. Most people don't think that's a great idea. However, we need to be conscious of the other side too, how much supply we have and growth. I can tell you that the city manager has provided me a guidance that says we right now have 54 MGD of available water from the Rio Grande. We want to add 30 million to that in other supply, which will then get us about a 65-35 split between surface water and another supply. That supply will be made up of pieces and parts from this. Groundwater is a very relevant opportunity. We have 3 opportunities that we're exploring at this very moment, okay, that I think maybe all 3 could be viable. We'll do better running the utility by the valves and the main replacements and those things will be a contributor to that outcome. We also put 20 million gallons a day of the 34 we take out back in the stream. We can recapture that. I told them to add that to our master plan. It wasn't in there. That's 20 million gallons a day. Our average day today is 34 million gallons in 2024. Max day was 44. 20 is a big number when you compare it to 34. And I've also done a calculation, and I can tell you this. Other places, I've had the power of the pen in regard to water usage. If we, in essence, had some emergency and we shut down all non-essential use, that means no commercial, no industrial, just residential, our demand would be around 17 million gallons a day. We have X amount in storage, we're adding storage tanks. So all of this stuff comes together, and it should be part of the decision on how you approach this. Because if you just look at one thing and not all the things, you miss out on some things we have going for us that are of our own devices, right? And one of them's running the utility better, one of them's using some of our effluent, getting additional source of supply, and quite frankly, I said this to the mayor, one of the mayors that was there, because he asked me, desal is not a source of supply, it's a treatment technique. So don't forget that. There's an ocean of opportunities to use desal to get it. But you don't, desal didn't create the ocean, okay? So make sure you separate RO, desal, conventional, those are treatment techniques. We need the water to treat, and different techniques for different types of water. So that's the way I kind of put it in some kind of perspective. I hope that answers your question.
So that's what I'm saying, just continue the conservation, even know what level we're at.
I had a full-time leak detection person for me in Ohio. I had 3 plants on Lake Erie. The Great Lakes aren't running out of water. It's the greatest source of water in the world, and we had 50 inches of rain. But we didn't waste water. We didn't waste chemicals, we didn't waste power, and we didn't want water main breaks everywhere, okay? So it's not mutually exclusive to whether you have water or not, it's how you run a business that's a custodian of the water supply. is the way I would put
Yeah,
it.
it's like you said, when you put those meters in at 3 in the morning, someone's just wasting water, you're like, hey.
Well, the other thing is, I'm an absolute advocate of, there's no sprinkling between 10 AM and 6 PM. There's too much evaporation.
Me too.
It's a waste of people's money,
That's right.
and it's a, in my opinion, and I think the facts will bear that out, okay? So, my point to all of you is, and to this community is, we're gonna do everything, because everything needs to be done. And when you put everything together, really good things happen, and I think that's what you're gonna see.
Thank you guys.
Y'all wanna do, y'all gotta conclude or do topic for next meeting? Or you
This,
wanna-
the same thing, for District 8, just, what streets are you considering or looking at, so I can get that
Put together
information
that
to you?
list.
Sure, we'll get you the list.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna waste anybody else's time, but just understood that the city went to the legislative trip in Austin, just, you know,
Maybe not.
some quick summary of maybe how that went.
If there's any
Want
water
it now or next meeting?
Well, we can do next meeting, because I
Right,
know
'cause you're already over,
people need
it's
to
already
go. Yeah.
1:15.
Okay, so we have a witching hour we have to quit by, okay. All right, I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know,
And I think there's some interesting information I can give you.
Well, I
Yeah.
think, isn't there another trip to?
so there's a DC.
You're going to DC on the 9th.
So
Yeah.
maybe we can talk
So
about.
maybe you could.
Yeah, let's do that, we'll do them both.
We can include both.
Yeah,
Sure.
that
Okay.
would be great.
Not about the restaurants, just for.
I guess motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Declining?